The rain came down the mountain road in sheets, and Kenji Arakawa told his driver to kill the headlights before the last turn. He was 38 years old, the head of the Arakawa Kai, and in 9 days he was supposed to marry a woman he had spoken to alone exactly 4 times. He had not slept properly in a month. The wedding was not a wedding. It was a merger, and everyone involved understood that, including the bride. What kept him awake was something smaller and stranger. 3 nights before, at a dinner in Ginza where the sake cost more than a laborer's month, his fiancé had leaned toward him with her chin on her hand and said, almost lazily, that the African woman working at the old house in Hakone was stealing from him. "She has no references anyone can verify," Reina Mizuhara had said. "She sends money out of the country every month. Ask your accountant. Then ask yourself why a house nobody lives in needs a full-time housekeeper at all." He had said nothing. He had learned young that silence is the only thing that costs nothing and buys everything. But the sentence had gotten into him like water into a crack in stone. And now it was freezing and splitting him open, and so at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night in October, he was riding up a mountain in the rain to catch a woman he had met twice. Her name was Amara. That was all he really knew. Amara Nwachukwu, 29, hired 2 years earlier by his lieutenant Goro to keep the old family house from rotting. He remembered her as tall and quiet, with her hair wrapped in dark cloth, and he remembered that she had not looked away when he looked at her, which almost nobody did. That was the whole of it. 2 encounters, maybe 90 seconds of conversation, and a name on a payroll he had never bothered to read. The old house sat above the lake behind a wall of black pine. It had been his grandfather's, then his father's, and after his father's funeral, Kenji had not gone back. There were reasons. He told himself the reasons were about business. The car stopped. He got out into the rain alone and told Goro to wait. The gate was unlocked. That was the first thing. In his world, an unlocked gate is either carelessness or an invitation, and both are dangerous. He went up the gravel path with his coat soaking through and his jaw set, and he was already composing the sentence he would use, quiet, unhurried. The kind of sentence that ends a person's employment, and sometimes more, when he came around the corner of the house and saw light burning in the east wing. The east wing had been closed for 3 years. He had closed it himself. The rain drummed on the tiles. He walked to the veranda, and through the gap where the shutter had been slid back for air, he saw into the room, and everything he had come up the mountain carrying went out of him at once. Like a man dropping a bag he had not known was heavy. His mother was sitting up in bed. Hetsu Arakawa was 74 and had not known her own son's face in 2 years. The doctors had a word for it, and the family had a different word for it, which was nothing. They simply stopped speaking of her. After his father died, Kenji had signed the papers that moved her to a facility in Kanagawa with white corridors and a fountain in the lobby. And he had visited 9 times in 3 years. And every one of those 9 times she had looked at him with the mild, terrible politeness you give a stranger who has sat down at your table. She was not in Kanagawa. She was here, in the east wing of the old house, propped against 3 pillows with a blanket over her knees, and the African woman was sitting on a low stool beside the bed, with a bowl of rice porridge in her hands. "Small one now, Mama," Amara was saying. Her Japanese was accented and careful and unexpectedly gentle. "Small one. Then we rest." His mother opened her mouth like a child. Amara fed her, wiped the corner of her lip with her thumb, and set the bowl down. Then she began to sing. Kenji did not know the language. It was not Japanese, and it was not English. It was low and slow, and it rocked, the way water rocks against the side of a boat, and his mother's hands stopped their endless picking at the blanket and lay still. Halfway through, in the place where the melody turned, his mother's cracked voice came in underneath it, following, half a beat behind, humming a tune she could not possibly have known and yet did. He stood in the rain with his hand against the cold wood of the shutter and could not move. When the song ended, his mother said something. He had to lean closer to catch it. "Amara-chan," she said. "Is my son coming?" The woman did not hesitate, did not sigh, did not correct her. "He is very busy, Mama," she said, "but he thinks of you. Every day he thinks of you." "He was a serious boy," his mother said, "even as a baby. So serious. You told me. Yesterday, you told me." "Did I?" "You can tell me again," and his mother laughed. Actually laughed. A small, dry sound like paper. And Kenji Arakawa, who had buried 2 brothers and ordered things done that he did not let himself remember in daylight, stood in the dark outside his own family home and found that his face was wet with something that was not entirely rain. He must have made a sound. Amara turned her head. She did not scream. She stood, put herself between the bed and the window, and looked straight at the shape of a man in the darkness with her chin up. Only when he stepped into the light did her shoulders come down, half an inch. "Arakawa-san," she said. Outside, she glanced at his mother. 2 minutes, she told her. "I am here." They stood on the veranda under the eaves. The rain came off the roof in a silver curtain a foot from their faces. "Explain," he said. "You will not like it. Explain anyway." So she did. She told him that 11 months ago the facility in Kanagawa had called the number on the file, and the number on the file was the old house, because a secretary had entered it wrong 4 years earlier, and nobody had ever checked. She told him his mother had stopped eating, that they were talking about a feeding tube, that the woman had gone 6 days without saying a single word to a single person. She told him she had gone down there on her day off with rice and a thermos, sat with her for 4 hours, and gotten her to eat. And then I went every week. And then the doctor said something to me that I did not forget. Amara looked out at the rain. He said, "She is not dying of her illness. She is dying of the quiet. So you took her." I asked Goro-san. He said he would ask you. She paused. "He asked you in March. In the car, coming back from Yokohama. You said do whatever you think is right." Kenji closed his eyes. He remembered March. He remembered nothing about March. "You have been keeping my mother," he said, "for 7 months. In a closed wing. Alone. Not alone. A nurse comes Tuesdays and Fridays. Dr. Sakai comes on the 1st of the month. I have the records. Every visit, every medicine, every meal." She said it flatly, like a woman who had been building a defense for a long time and had always known she would one day have to give it. "It is all written." "Written where?" She went inside and came back with a notebook, and he opened it there on the veranda with the rain 3 inches from the pages. It was all there. Dates, doses, temperatures, what his mother ate and how much of it, what she said and whether she knew what day it was. Small notes in the margin in a careful foreign hand, sang today, remembered the plum tree, called me by her sister's name, cried in the afternoon, better after bath. And then at the back, under a folded corner, a different set of columns entirely. Names, amounts, dates going back nearly 2 years. He looked up. "What is this?" For the first time, she hesitated. "Read it," he said. "It is my wages," Amara said. He read the names. He knew them. He knew every single one. Yoshida, Katayama, Mori, Endo. They were not names of the living. They were the names of men who had died in the 10 years he had been running the Arakawa Kai. A driver, 2 soldiers, a bookkeeper who had been in the wrong restaurant on the wrong evening, and beside each name were the amounts that had gone out of this woman's pay envelope every month to the wives and mothers and children they had left behind. Why? He said. It did not come out as a question. It barely came out at all. Because the organization pays them for 1 year, Amara said. 1 year. Then it stops. I know because I asked, and a child does not stop eating in the 2nd year, Arakawa-san. These are my people. That is my responsibility. Yes, she agreed. The word sat there in the rain between them, and it was the most brutal thing anyone had said to him in a decade, and she had said it without any heat at all. He turned the page back to the front of the ledger because his hands wanted something to do, and that is when he saw the first entry, dated 2 years and 1 month ago, before her employment began. A name and no amount. Chibueze no Chuku, who is this? The rain filled the silence for a long moment. My father, she said. Why is he in this book? Because he died the same way they did. He looked at her. He drove a delivery van in Kawasaki, Amara said. 14 years in this country. Very boring man. He liked baseball, and he was proud that he never once was late. She was not looking at him now. 3 years ago, he stopped at a light on Route 15 behind a black car. Somebody shot at the black car. They did not shoot at my father. They only did not care very much whether they hit him. Kenji did not move. He knew the intersection. He knew the date without being told it. He had been in the 2nd vehicle. I came here to bring his body home, she said. But there were costs, papers, and the airline, and my mother's medicine at home, and my brother's school fees, and I could not do it in 1 month, and then it was 6 months. And then I understood I would be here a long time. So I looked for work. And a man named Goro found me crying at a police station where nobody would tell me anything. And he was kind to me. And he gave me a card. You knew, Kenji said, when you took the job. You knew whose house this was. I knew. Then why? Amara Nuachuku turned and looked at him, and it was the same look from 2 years ago, the one that did not slide away. Because I sat in that police station for 9 hours, she said, and I decided what kind of person my father's daughter was going to be. And the answer was not a person who hates. Hating would have been very easy, Arakawa-san. I had all the reasons. But my father was not a hater, and I was not going to bury him and become one, because then he would be gone twice. She took a breath. And also, because I needed the money. Both things are true. I am not a saint. I am a woman with a mother in Enugu and a brother in school, and a very good reason to be angry. And I chose to spend my life on something else. Behind them, from the lit room, his mother's voice called out, thin and uncertain, Amara-chan? I am here, Amara called back. 1 moment, Mama, she looked at him, waiting for the sentence that ended things. Kenji Arakawa handed her back the notebook. Go to her, he said. He stood on the veranda for a long time after that, in a suit worth more than her annual salary, in the rain, and thought about ledgers. His whole life was ledgers. Debts entered, debts collected. The meticulous arithmetic of obligation that his father had taught him with a bamboo cane across the knuckles. He had believed that was what honor was. He had been about to marry a woman on the strength of a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet was sound. And the alliance was sound. And Reina Mizuhara had sat in a Ginza restaurant and told him to look into the housekeeper because, he understood it now, cleanly, the way you understand a thing you have been refusing to look at. Because a housekeeper who kept the mother alive was a problem. A mother who lived was a share of an estate. A mother who lived was a witness. Reina had not been protecting his money. She had been tidying. He went back to the car at 2 a.m. "Goro," he said, in March. "Did you ask me about my mother?" The old man's hands stayed on the wheel. "I did, Oyabun, and I said do whatever you think is right. You did. Why did you not ask me again?" Goro was quiet for a while. "Because I have known you since you were 9 years old," he said, "and I thought if you saw it with your own eyes one day, it would mean more than if I told you." Kenji looked out at the black lake. "Cancel the wedding," he said. There was no argument. There was not even a pause. Goro simply inclined his head, the way he had for 30 years, and started the engine. It cost him. Of course it cost him. The Mizuhara family took it as an insult, which it was, and there were 6 weeks in which men who had smiled at him stopped smiling. And 2 contracts collapsed, and one night in December somebody put a rifle round through the window of a building he had left 11 minutes earlier. He handled it. Handling it was the one thing he had always known how to do. But in the same 6 weeks, other things happened, and those he had not known how to do at all, and he did them badly, and then less badly. He opened the east wing properly and had the heating fixed. He hired 2 nurses and kept Amara as the person who decided everything, which meant that on paper a Nigerian housekeeper now had authority over medical staff in an Arakawa property, and he watched the faces of the men who noticed, and none of them said a word. He wrote into the books of the organization a permanent provision for the families of the dead. Not 1 year, all the years, school fees included. And when his accountant asked what to call the line item, he thought for a moment and said, "Call it the Nwachukwu account," and refused to explain it to anyone. He went to Kawasaki alone in January and stood at an intersection on Route 15 for 20 minutes in the cold. And then he made a phone call and arranged, quietly and completely and without ever putting his own name near it, for a body to go home to Enugu and for a headstone to be paid for in a country he would never see. He did not tell her. She found out in April from her mother on the telephone, and she came and stood in the door of his study, and neither of them said anything for a long moment. "Why did you not say?" she asked finally. "Because it was not a gift," Kenji said. "It was a debt. You do not thank a man for paying what he owes." And on Sundays he began to come up the mountain and sit on the floor beside his mother's bed and hold her hand while she called him by his father's name, and sometimes his uncle's, and once in a while, not often, but enough, by his own. He learned to feed her without spilling. He learned to wait through the same story 4 times. He learned the song, badly, in a language he could not speak, from a woman who had every right on earth to have let his mother die of the quiet, and did not. That was 2 years ago. He never did marry Reina Mizuhara. Ask him now what he saw that night through a gap in a shutter, and Kenji Arakawa will tell you it was nothing dramatic. A woman feeding an old woman rice. That is all. But he had spent his whole life measuring people by what they were owed and what they could take. And he stood in the rain and watched somebody quietly give away everything she had to a family that had cost her her father, keeping the accounts not because anyone would ever check them, but because she intended to be able to look at her own hands. And he understood, with the wedding invitations already printed and gilded and sitting in a box in his office, that he had been about to spend the rest of his life with someone who would never once have done that, and that he had very nearly become a man who would not have known the difference.